Hey. Can you hear me okay? No. Oh, good. Now I can hear.
Yay. All right, how's everyone doing?
Hi, Allison.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi. I can't believe Marie painted her nails for this.
Al. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah, Allison and I
Show me up
try to one up each other.
showered.
I know. Yeah, you showered while I had to paint my nails.
How's the family doing, Liz?
About as well as you can expect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
been thinking about you.
Thank you.
At
Thank
least
you
your
for
hair
your
looks
gift
good.
card. Yeah, I did my hair. You know, I got out of the house.
I'm just in like Frizzy, Illinois. I'm like, ugh.
I know it's frizzy Minnesota too, but I was like, I'm not gonna succumb to the frizz.
So Allison, we're just waiting a couple minutes for folks to join and then we will get into it.
When is Steph joining?
At the end, I think.
We mixed her into the whole conversation.
Let me reach out to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's Steph.
She's coming in right now. Perfect.
She's connecting to audio. Is she connecting to vid too?
Hi, Steph.
Hi.
Hi, Steph. I'm Liz.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Marie, have you met Steph?
I don't think so.
I have not, but I've heard a lot about you, and I'm gonna sync up over email with you hopefully after this too, because I have some questions, especially in terms of supporting minors.
Oh, awesome. Great.
Expertise.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Anka.
Hey, we've been in touch so much over email, so it's nice to see you.
Yeah, you as well.
That's how I felt when I got to see Anka for the first time. I'm like, I get so many emails. Now I get to see her face.
I know.
That's how I make everyone feel. There's a face behind the email address.
You are real.
I know everybody else hates it, but it's my favorite part about COVID because before I came back to the clinic, I was just alone in California for like 5 months. And so I just wanted to be on all the Zooms so I can see people's faces and like had no problem with it at all. Cause I needed someone's face besides my husband's. It was getting so ugly, I couldn't take it anymore. I was just dying to learn this week that Kat also has a con cat, and it almost made me pee my pants that y'all have con cats. So I was like, this is out of control.
Yep. Yeah, and they're all black cats with green eyes. Like,
Wait, what's a con cat?
Cat named Khan.
Cat's name is actually Khan.
Oh,
yeah, like Khan. And then mine are Khan is their last name, and then Genghis and Shaka are their first names.
It also sounds like it could be her cable company.
Right.
yeah, I was like, is this internet?
Also, folks in like the New York area, I've been seeing these messages about a storm, and it's apparently at the level where they've named it. And of course, it's Isaiah. Of course, it's a dude name.
No, it's not Isaiah.
It's not Isaiah. It's a different one.
Mm-hmm. It's called there's another vowel in it. It's like Isaiah. It's not Isaiah. It's because this whole round it's called like something that's not Isaiah, but it sounds like it.
Okay.
I heard it on the news this morning, but now I can't repeat it because it was a word.
It's a name I've never heard before.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a name I'd never heard before. So yeah.
All right, y'all. On that note, I think that enough folks have joined that we should go ahead and get started with today's conversation. So I'm just going to briefly provide some like logistical info, and then I'll hand it over to Liz and Marie. So hello, everyone. My name is Anka. I'm the community engagement person at AAF. And I'll just be the point of contact for any Zoom logistic things. So I just wanted to let everyone know that there's two functions that folks can use because all participants are muted and unvideoed on entry. So you can use the chat box to talk directly to to each of the panelists or all panelists and attendees. So feel free to use that chat if like there's anything that comes up in conversation that you just have any comments about. And then we also have a Q&A box where you can just drop in your questions, because the last 15 minutes of this conversation is going to be reserved for Q&A with our wonderful panelists. And so those are the two big pieces where you can contact all of the folks who are on this panel. Another thing to know is that this session is being recorded. Again, none of the panelists' names or anything like that will appear in this none of the attendees' names or anything like that will appear in this recording, but the panelists will be recorded for this event. So that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Liz and Marie, who are our amazing Abortion AF dream team, and they are going to be interviewing Alison and Steph. But they will have more information on all that. Alison and Steph both work with the Hope Clinic in Granite City, Illinois. And so we're so thrilled to be in conversation with them today as Abortion AF, just to figure out, what's going on, like what's going on in the St. Louis area, and how can we show up for providers in the ways that they need us to be. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to you, Liz.
Awesome, thank you so much, Anka. And I wanna just quickly shout out Anka and Anna Bean for organizing this incredible event, and for getting all of you wonderful folks here to have this, what we hope will be a series of conversations. Part of the reason that we're doing this webinar is for those of you who have worked with AAF, you know that our bread and butter normally is traveling around the country and doing comedy shows or music shows that involve a talkback with providers and activists in those communities, really giving our audience an opportunity to hear about what's at stake for access to abortion in their state, to hear the needs of the clinics, to hear the needs of the activists, and to sign up right in the room and to really help facilitate and grow the activist bases and support for the clinics locally. And because of COVID, we're unable to travel, but what we thought was we would start a series of webinars with clinics that we have worked with who have projects going on that we can help support and engage local bases of support that we have there and connect them with on the ground basis of support, as well as maybe some folks who have never had AAF come to their town so they can get kind of a little bit of a hearing on what happens when we come, what happens when we do a show, although we won't be doing a show, but how we can facilitate, especially mutual aid for clinics and especially any kind of help that you may need. I really wanted to provide an opportunity to do that. So without further ado, let's get cracking and talking about how we can help St. Louis and in turn how we can help y'all and how we can help the activists become better activists in the communities that you are in. So joining me is the Director of Operations at Abortion Access Front, and also she serves as the Director of Operations of the Midwest Access Coalition, Marie Khan.
Hello.
Hi, Marie. And also joining us are two people I'm very excited about. Alison Dreith, who's the Deputy Director of the Hope Clinic for Women in Granite City, Illinois, and who we have worked with extensively when she was at NARAL, Missouri, and also now in this role. And so I'm so happy to have you. Hi, Alison.
Hi. So excited to be here.
So excited that you're here. And an activist and an attorney and an advocate for reproductive justice in Missouri and Illinois, who also provides free legal representation for young folks in Illinois who are seeking abortion care without involving their parents, and who's working on a super amazing project with the Hope Clinic in Illinois that we're going to be talking about in a little while. Please welcome Stephanie Kraft Sheley. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
And I'm going with Steph.
Steph is great.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So I just want to kick off just a little bit about like regionally what abortion looks like in this area that Hope Clinic provides. Hope Clinic is located in Illinois, but only about 28% of the patients are from Illinois, which means 67% are from Missouri and another 5% are from other states, which means most travel over 100 miles to access care. Also, Hope Clinic is this incredible clinic that's been around since 1974, and they're an amazing independent provider that a lot of folks don't know exist because, as we all know, independent providers are working on their own, and not unlike indie bookstores or indie music stores, they don't have the name recognition of a larger abortion care chains like Planned Parenthood. So it's super important to uplift and let folks know that clinics like Hope are available. And the environment they work in is pretty hostile. They don't have a fence. They have the protesters have open access to the clinic, and that can cause a lot of really problematic ways to provide care and to access care when you are living in the area. So that's just a super broad overview of Hope Clinic. So I just want to address to both of you, and Alison, I'll start with you, and then we'll go over to you, Steph. Alison, talk a little bit about expanding on what I have sort of laid out as far as where Hope Clinic is, who you actually serve, and what brought you to the work.
Well, I came to the work at the clinic after spending over a decade in reproductive rights. As you mentioned, I'm the former ED of NARAL Pro-Choice Missouri. And it wasn't until a couple of things kind of happened simultaneously. In 2016, after we had the whole women's health decision, I had my own abortion, and I because I had worked in abortion rights for so long, I knew what the laws were like in Missouri. And I knew that when I needed access to care, that I needed access to care, and I didn't need a 72-hour waiting period to make me think even longer about the decision my husband and I had already made. And so I was really privileged in my abortion that I knew the laws, I knew the clinic. I texted my abortion care provider, Dr. King, and was able to set that up really smoothly. And it really helped me to understand or to see better that a lot of the work we had been doing in reproductive rights wasn't really rooted in the experience of abortion providers or abortion patients themselves. So that's when I started working to come to the clinic and use some of the skill set I had picked up in the reproductive rights arena in the clinical setting. And a few short later, I was finally able to do that. So that's what's really exciting about being here at the clinic now.
Will you lay out a little bit, Alison, sort of, for those who aren't familiar with Hope Clinic, will you lay out sort of the landscape of your proximity to Missouri and to St. Louis and how that all factors in? Just give people a little geographical lesson on where you're working.
So Granite City, Illinois is in the St. Louis metropolitan area. So it's only 10 minutes from downtown St. Louis, but in Southern Illinois, which like a lot of the rest of the country, was once a booming industrial town, and with jobs being shipped off to other countries for cheaper labor practices, has really kind of devastated the area in which we operate in. So when you come to the area, it's sad. There's a lot of smokestacks. There's a lot of shut down steel mills, and it's just kind of generally a gray and cold area. But we are one of the first independent providers that opened in the country after Roe v. Wade was upheld in 1974, and have been operating ever since. Not only as one of the oldest providers in the region, but I think in a community that really reflects what the rest of the country looks like, that we're not in a major city, we're in a small 20,000 or so people live here, and really shows, you know, as Abortion Care Network members or ACN members, why we need care in communities and why independent providers are so important when they're rooted in kind of the smaller communities like we are.
Awesome. And Steph, talk a little bit about how you came to the work.
Yeah, so since I moved to the area, I've been working around abortion access issues for particularly young people in both Missouri and Illinois. And so through those networks that I've built up over the years, I met Alison when she was at her former role at NARAL in Missouri, and continued to stay in touch, and then learned about this opportunity to become a legal observer at the clinic and observe the behavior of the protesters. And so I signed up to be trained in that role, and have been helping out at the clinic ever since.
Awesome.
That's wonderful.
It does so much more than that.
Alison, as you mentioned, Hope Clinic geographically situated right at the border with Missouri, and it's also not that far. I'm not going to whip out a graphic, but from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. And I know you see folks, especially driving up from there in states that have a lot of restrictions. How are the barriers or challenges that you face in your work particularly affected and exacerbated by this location near to St. Louis and other surrounding states, especially politically? How does that create challenges and tension for you?
Well, I think in some ways we're really lucky to be operating in Illinois, especially last year in 2019 when we finally had a new governor, Governor Pritzker, signed into law the Reproductive Health Act, when there were a lot of questions in the past 12 months with these abortion bans passing all across the country of what access would look like while President Trump is still in power. And as states weave this kind of patchwork of access across the country. Illinois is kind of a blue state surrounded by not only red states, but red states that are very hostile when it comes to access to abortion. So Missouri in particular is really tough to border next to. A lot of our staff members and our physicians are Missouri residents, and they have to cross state lines to provide care every day. And for a lot of intensive purposes, especially during COVID, when there was a lot of fear about what new restrictions might come down, really led us to panic of how we follow the law. We know we're located in Illinois and we follow Illinois law, but sometimes for all intensive purposes, we feel like we operate in multiple states because that's where our staff lives or that's where our patients come from. Same with Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky. We see so many patients because of limits at 14 weeks in pregnancy or waiting periods, or those COVID mandates that governors were handing down, deeming us unessential care, even though pregnancy is the most time sensitive care I can even imagine. So it's really hard sometimes, and we really worry about the patients we serve and our colleagues. We're constantly sending cookies and referral packages to EMW in Kentucky or to Choices in Memphis to say, we're here standing by you, even though you're going through this terrible thing with your patients right now. But we are really lucky to be kind of in the Midwest, in the upper South, and be able to not only keep our doors open, but be welcoming to those folks who have a lot of uncertainty right now, traveling from so far away.
And I think what I wanted to point out before Marie gets to her next question is, Illinois was one of the states that had some really crappy laws on the books, even though they were blue. And to pass the Reproductive Health Act was really helpful to make sure that some of those lingering garbage laws got thrown out. I'm right now in Minnesota waiting out COVID. In Minnesota, Gender Justice and some other organizations are also campaigning to get some of those laws up the books. And so I think as we talk about this, it's really important for all of us as activists, no matter what the state we're in, if you have a state that is going to be amenable to getting rid of those laws, to really pushing forward on that, so that places like Illinois and hopefully Minnesota can become havens, especially on bordering states like you have been so profound in doing so.
And with like North and South Dakota for Minnesota, right? There's just always those questions remain if North Dakota is providing care or not, or Iowa, where stuff kind of comes from. It's more important than ever. And it's not just weird abortion laws that were passed in 1974 and that haven't really played out, but that could play out should a bad Supreme Court ruling come or another bad presidential administration. But there's so many interesting things that you guys can look into in your own states or localities that could be repealed from. I know St. Louis has a law on the books to ban fortune tellers downtown by the river or whatever. It's like, what year was that passed and why are we still have this law? But there's so many things like that that could just be so harmful in the wrong hands. And we're glad to have a governor now who really cares about the health and well-being, not only of the people who get pregnant in the state, but the surrounding states too, because that was a real driving force to pass this law and to overturn those bad things in the books.
And I think having a coalition like Abortion Access Front and our Scrappy Coalition, if there's something that a state has going on that's garbagey and they need help crafting and planning and pushing that out, like that's one of the things that we really love about this coalition of people, many of whom are on this webinar today. It's like, you want to try to get rid of that? Let's help make graphics. Let's help push that out for you. Let's really do that. So if you think it seems too big, we're a good place to come and rally the troops and have people really stand behind what's happening with those kind of things.
100%. You've always supported us, and our staff just loves it and thinks that you're rock stars. And it's really been that attention with care and love that has empowered our staff who's just trying to perform abortion care every day to be like, I can be an advocate too. I can go to my state capitol and advocate for this too, because of the support that Abortion Access Front has provided them directly and how they've shown up for them. It made them feel like they had the tools to be an advocate like you all are.
Wonderful. I liked, especially Alison, how you phrased it. Even though the clinic's located in Illinois, you're thinking about and operating to assist folks from all over the country. What do you see as the particular barriers that directly impact the pregnant folks that come to your community within Granite City for care?
Well, it's always transportation support. Luckily, Marie also, has 20 jobs, and one of them is with Midwest Access Coalition, who is a huge support to our patient, whether it's getting them transportation here or childcare or a hotel room, food, whatever. All of our patients, I swear, crave pizza after they're done with their procedure. So we're always getting them pizzas, but I think that's the biggest thing, is just that practical support. And so signing up to be a volunteer driver or donating to MAC or whoever can provide that support is really important. But I think another challenge there too are other states' laws. Missouri has the worst gun laws in the entire country. They are also one of the worst states when it comes to abortion access. So that's not a real surprise then. But when 67% of your patients are coming from Missouri, them and their drivers are also bringing their firearms to the clinic, which can create a real scare, not only for clinic staff or patients, but sometimes for the protesters outside, because folks who are often open carrying don't really care about how the laws change once they cross the border. And so I think it's very nuanced between practical support and how other laws in neighboring states, whether they're directly about abortion or not, carry over as you travel for care.
Yeah. And that brings me to you, Steph, because all of those are massive barriers for vulnerable people who are adults. I know, Steph, that you advocate so strongly for minors who are seeking abortion care. And I'm sure that minors coming from other states, minors who are in state, have an incredible challenge. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what those challenges look like and how you help advocate for them.
Sure. Yeah. So, being a young person often exacerbates the challenges that a lot of adult folks face, like those practical support challenges and everything, because in addition to having those barriers in the first place, having the sophistication to navigate this maze that you have to navigate in order to get care, it's an additional challenge. And I talk to many young people who blow me away, are so sophisticated and amazing, but it's not something, they haven't gotten to the point in their lives that they're have needed to navigate situations like this before. So it's naturally more complicated for them. And then in particular in Missouri, the laws are so hostile to abortion. And it makes it very hard to access abortion within Missouri borders at all.
Right.
And then for young people, there are particular laws that make it even more onerous. The Missouri law requires parental involvement in the form of parental consent and sometimes notification as well to their parents. Or they can go to court and ask a judge to give them permission to have an abortion without their parents being involved. And that's getting a lawyer and getting yourself to court is a hard thing for a lot of adults to do. It's nearly impossible for a lot of young folks to do, particularly undetected by their parents if they're getting out of school. Now it's a pandemic. I don't even know how a lot of people would get out of the house without their parents knowing. And then in addition to that, Missouri has a law that says that if you assist a young person to leave the state for abortion without their parents' permission, their parents can sue you and the attorney general can sue you to enjoin your conduct. So it creates this chilling effect on folks that want to help people access care in states like Illinois, where it's easier to get care. So yeah, probably.
I was thinking about how many parents I know with teens, and I'm like, would it be easier for a teen just to get out because parents desperately do not want their teens in the house? It's like, Mom, I'm just going to go anywhere. Go anywhere. I don't care where you're going. Just leave this house. Leave. You can leave for a whole day. What do you need? So I was wondering if COVID would all be helpful to parents.
So this is a great segue. So in addition to talking about the politics surrounding abortion care, we currently are in a global pandemic, and we know that the Midwest is a hot spot not only for the emboldening of anti-abortion communities, but also the coronavirus. Alison, how has COVID-19 in particular changed or created additional challenge to abortion in your clinic and your community? I mean, up to like threatening with clinic closures being threatened by different state governments.
I mean, it's been a real roller coaster, just like the pandemic itself, right? We were really lucky that Illinois I think was the second state to call a shelter-in-place order behind California within the same week of each other. And that right from the beginning, again, Governor Pritzker, who has been a champion on this issue, deemed all healthcare, including access to abortion, essential healthcare. And so that was a really good first step for us. And then we had to navigate the real fears that everyone in this world felt when they first hit that the pandemic had hit their territory or their state or country or whatever, was that fear about not only keeping our patients safe, but keeping our staff and their families safe, and how we would navigate that. So protocols and clinic flow change rapidly and many times over. Just be able to continue providing the compassionate, high quality care that we had always been known for, but to do it even more safely and on top of this deadly virus that was novel. It was new and we knew very little about. Today, 4 or 5 months down the road, we're back to providing care similar to what you would have expected before March. But in some ways, we've changed our standard of care into ways that have made our waiting times cut in half. And so we'll never go back to the way we provided care before, because it's benefited our patients and our staff so much. But then there's always those other challenges. It's that the protesters are still outside of our clinic and they're not wearing masks. And we had to pause our clinic escort and legal observer program for a while to protect those volunteers through NARAL, Missouri, or that there have been instances where either, patients or their support system or protesters are, spitting or not at each other, it's been really difficult not to have that support system outside of the clinic and to be navigating anything inside, but also to deal with the protesters outside who will use any opportunity they can to further push the lines of what they're doing to turn away patients outside of our clinic. And COVID-19 has been nothing different. They're really eating up the pandemic to further push people away and scare them. And in some ways, I think, put them in real danger.
Yeah, and I wanted to go to Stephanie about that because what that challenge has been, we've heard from a lot of different clinics that there are, with many states allowing churches to gather, and people are getting their marching orders, and churches have been emboldening their parishioners to go in droves to the clinics. They aren't with masks, they aren't social distancing. They're against the mask. They think COVID's a hoax. So Stephanie, I would love to hear from you, some of the things that you've witnessed that not only are they intimidating, harassing, and terrorizing patients when there's not a pandemic, but without the masks. Talk a little bit about what that is like and what that feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's certainly been no slowdown that I've observed in the number of folks and their behaviors. And I think that a lot of the behaviors that they persist in have become much more intimidating because they are doing it without a mask. So like, for example, following patients from the overflow parking lot where they have to walk on public property. And I mean, I've witnessed patients being chased while they're trying to get away, and like these folks are yelling, they're not maintaining distance, there's multiple people like following them at a pretty fast clip. And I think that I mean, certainly if I were in that situation, I would be fearful that I was being exposed to whatever that person had, in addition to the terrible things that they're shouting and the fact that they're chasing me. So that's been the main thing. But yeah, I mean, I've seen a total reluctance on their part to wear masks or keep distance, and from each other as well. I mean, they do seem to not take this seriously at all, although it does seem to be the case that like if law enforcement is called, all of a sudden a mask appears. But
Every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about the only time you see it.
Mm-hmm.
That's so disheartening on a base level. Stephanie, you got a really full plate. You're committed to establishing legal and physical protections for abortion access and concretely for the patients and staff at Hope Clinic. What have been some of the successes and challenges of the work that you do, both in regards to your work with Hope and then abortion activism at large?
Yeah, so with Hope, so in addition, my legal observer role that started out as being outside of the clinic and observing and documenting the anti-choice protester conduct, that has expanded into actually being a part of the clinic's legal team dealing on issues of clinic defense. And so through that work, I've gotten to see both how like legal observers being present does curb some of the most egregious behaviors, at least while we have our cameras trained on folks. And so I do feel like there's a slight deterrent in us being out there. And then also just like getting to partner with Hope and going out and having conversations with folks in the community, like law enforcement, and just starting to make those inroads to help them understand like what's really happening on the ground, and that, you know, Hope wants to be a really valuable part of the community and that they're trying to make those relationships. So that's been super rewarding to see. And I mean, of course, challenges are that the law is not a great tool for actually stopping protesters from engaging in a lot of these behaviors, because a lot of their conduct, at least theoretically, that they say that they're doing, is legally protected. And so trying to like draw those lines and get law enforcement to recognize that like a toe over the line here or amplified sound over here, although like those seem like petty complaints, the cumulative effect of those is like creating this really upsetting, distressing, and kind of dangerous environment for the folks entering and leaving the clinic. And so I've found that like really challenging, because it seems so difficult to get those folks to understand what we're actually complaining about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then in terms of just like overall successes with my work, I think the most rewarding thing that happens is when I represent a young person in court who wants an abortion without their parents involved, and the judge says that they're granting that petition, and the relief is like an amazing thing to witness. And I just, that in itself, like that's just its own reward for like all the challenges that we deal with. And that but challenges in doing this work in this area is that it's super hard. I have found it unbelievably difficult to get great work that is needed funded. And I think that this is not an issue that I alone have. I think that this is something that we talk about a lot in the reproductive rights, health, and justice movement in this area. And I think there are numerous barriers, and I think our location within the country versus where the funders are located is a part of that. But like without the funding, the work, a lot of great work is totally stifled. So that's been something that I've definitely learned as I've tried to get my own projects going here. And then just Missouri is where I do a lot of my work, and it's so intensely hostile to abortion. Mm-hmm. And it makes it, I mean, foreclosed so many reasonable options for folks to access, especially young people, to access care, that like you can tie yourself in knots trying to think legally, how can we make this or that resource available? And it's just difficult. They've done a great job of making it really hard to do it without running legal risks.
And I think that people do not understand the profundity of the anti-abortion movement in Missouri. When you look at the 72-hour waiting period, you know, Mike Moon and his like putting chickens in a grinder and saying that this is what happens, you know, during abortion, and getting a heartbeat bill. I mean, also for folks who don't follow the politics so profoundly, there's the Josh Hawley, who is a senator, has gone on record just last week to say he will not support any Supreme Court candidate who believes that Roe v. Wade is actually constitutional. So he said his vote goes with anybody who will say that they will vote for any justice who is against Roe v. Wade. And those things are really scary. And, you know, as we talk about what activism looks like, I think so often, one of the reasons I started Abortion Access Front is because I wanted to do something that I don't want to fight this battle in court, and that's the only place we ever fight it. We find out there's a law, and then there's fighting it in the law. We must change the conversation around abortion, destigmatize abortion, honor and support the activists working on it and the clinics that provide it, so that we are creating and normalizing abortion for what it is in this path to do that, to get to the legislative place. But that should be the last place we're fighting it. We need to change the hearts and minds. And so that makes me want to get, I guess, first to you, Alison, you know, as we especially are in a pandemic, and as you can, we had a really good experience when all of this COVID stuff happening and the attorneys general were trying to put clinics on pause and put procedures on pause. You know, you had an incredible online assault on your clinic, and the activists that we were able to gather were able to tamp that down. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about that and how that worked for you, and how that's one way that we can all get together and help out when you're attacked online as well.
Oh my God, that was one of the most amazing wins. And I'm glad you brought it up, because it was, you know, what's time anymore? And so I kind of forgot that it even happened. But one day, like Lila Rose and Live Action and all of her, you know, echo chamber goons were attacking us on Twitter because they associated us with a clinic in Louisiana who is at the center of the Supreme Court case, but is not on Twitter. And so I was just literally able to text Liz and Marie really quickly, because they are so prominent online, and we really aren't. As a little independent clinic, we're providing care day in and day out. So I schedule tweets in the morning. I'm not really looking at Twitter all day anymore, or I try not to. And so with your activism and a quick letter from Steph as a part of our legal team, they took down all those tweets within hours. And that's something you just really don't see a lot when it comes to anti-choice bullying and shaming. They're the minority, we know that, but they're really freaking loud. But when you can have someone who's been just as loud and destigmatizing abortion online and otherwise, like Abortion Access Front has been, it just really shut them up. And it was probably the most meaningful experience I've ever had online, because usually you're just taking the brunt of those attacks, whether you're sharing your own abortion story or whatever work that you're doing. And so it was really great example of why not only social media and digital is so important, but to have great friendships like the one that Abortion Access Front and Hope had with each other prior to going into this, where I knew who the experts were and I could lead on them to really take down the people that were making us have a hard, and our patients have a hard day. So it was,
yeah, and it was for us to be able to have our team, our coalition, that so that we could say, and activate, you know, because it was Abortion Access Front that you could contact, but then we contacted our coalition. And that's why, you know, it's so important when we do these online actions to really have our folks and our team and people who are listening for the first time to just take that retweet or take the graphic that we send out and put it into a feed. That stuff can really make a difference, especially when it's full of information and it's full of challenging, you know, people who are just lying about abortion. You know, it really matters. Sometimes it seems like, you know, it's dumb, but it really does make a difference. And so it's just another reason that we feel so strongly about really hearing when you see those things happen in real time, knowing that it made a difference, it caused change, it made them to take that down, and it made y'all be able to breathe. So I feel
well, and I think to add to that, something that's just as important as what you mentioned with squashing abortion stigma. You were talking about the legal challenges in other states and how that creates such a web of access, but that abortion stigma and squashing it is just as important. Like, that's why we tell activists, you say, what can we do? It's like, talk about abortion in a positive way, share your own abortion story, because just like the legal challenges in Missouri, you know, we have clinics in Chicago that have buffer zones where the mayor of Chicago has come around to protesters and said, put on your damn mask or you're getting fined or arrested. Well, we're in a really small kind of rural community where the police force doesn't have as many resources, that they might not stand as politically with us. And so we don't get also that legal kind of support that Steph has helped us build so much better relationships over the past year, but that we still see lacking so much because we're not the same as Chicago or St. Louis or whatever these, you know, major cities are. And so that abortion stigma busting is so important for our own work in our local communities to get the police force or the mayor or the alderperson or whoever also on our side to help them realize that we are an essential part of their community too.
Yeah. And I want to follow up with that, Alison, and then I know Marie's going to go to Stephanie. But one thing that I wanted to have you impart to any of our friends who are working at clinics who are on this call right now, if you would just talk to them about like how they should do outreach. I mean, you tweeted at us and we were there, and I guess just I'd love for you to like encourage some folks to not hesitate to reach out, because you may just be in a panic as a clinic and not know what to do, but we will try to help figure that out. So I'd just love for you to just talk about how you got the courage or what made you feel like, you know what, I just am going to reach out. And
listen, the clinic is always in a damn panic, okay? Like, we're dealing with people's lives here. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe everybody else I work with is like more even-headed. But when you have a patient right in front of you, you feel panic sometimes because you want to support them as quick as possible, you know? And so whether it's something that the clinic is dealing with online or, you know, patient support, I think relationships really matter, and that organizations, national organizations like Abortion Access Front, literally set themselves up to provide this support. So like, there's no reason that Abortion Access Front is going to continue to exist unless clinics, unless advocates ask them for that support. Like, that's why they were created. So there's no reason that you should be afraid to reach out. They're very responsive on social media. You know, hopefully at the end of this webinar, you'll get other ways to contact them. They have a website. Like, people are monitoring that stuff to our clinic stuff. You know, I monitor our Twitter and our Facebook all day long in case a patient DMs us or sends us a direct message. And these organizations do the same thing. So they're experts. They want to help. We're all in this together, just like we're fighting the pandemic together. And it sounds so cliche to say, but it's really true. Like, Liz wouldn't be doing her job. Marie wouldn't be doing her job unless people needed their support. And so lean on them, learn from them, and we'll get through all of this stigma and shame together. And while the arc of justice is long, we'll come out for a win for access to abortion in the long run.
Yeah, that is stated beautifully. We got a couple more questions, but first we wanted to ask our audience listening, if you have any questions for the panelists, please start typing those in now. And then I wanted to follow up with Stephanie. Steph, what are some questions that you would advise someone who's wanting to get engaged in volunteering with a clinic to ask, to get more involved, be in a supportive capacity, especially someone from your particular background, other people that you would, how would you tell other people to be drawn in?
Yeah, so I mean, do you mean like other folks, like lawyers that are wanting to get more involved, or local advocates that are wanting to get more involved in helping a clinic like Hope? Yeah, so I would say, I mean, first of all, I think the biggest thing is knowing yourself and what you're willing to do, because, for example, legal observing is amazing, and it fits my disposition and my skills really well. But you have to sit with yourself and decide whether or not it's going to be a comfortable situation for you to be out there interacting routinely with the same protesters over and over, because they're very aggressive, and some people can't handle that type of confrontation without responding back, and that's like one of our core tenets.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
You don't respond, you don't engage. And so I think that like knowing what you can bring is a huge thing, but like also that surely it's something. So I think like reaching out and asking, and sometimes you might have to ask multiple times what is needed, because folks like Alison are busy and they're not ignoring you, but like they might not have something right off the top of their head. Like it's a project for people to create a project for you to do. So I think like continuing to just follow up and ask like, how can I be of service, or say, this is what I can bring. For example, with the landscaping project that we're working with around this, like I said, I can bring this, I can offer this, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment. But, and I would also say, like, I'm sure that there are other clinics out there that need the legal support that I'm able to help offer Alison, alongside other great legal advocates. And that's something that does not require you to be out in public interacting in a tense environment.
A local one. You know, we have great lawyers with the ACLU and the Center for Reproductive Rights and the Lawyering Project, but to have someone who's local, who can show up physically when you need to have like that show of strength. I can't even tell you where we were with our relationships with elected officials in the police department in Granite City this time last year, but because of our interactions with them and just adding our lawyer Steph's email on our emails, we have come so far in bridging, you know, those relationships and those gaps. And so I think, you know, if you're a lawyer out there, there's so many things that you can do. And, you know, Steph is getting overwhelmed at this point. So she's taken applications for an intern just to deal with me. So you're welcome.
And I would also like to say too that, you know, one of the things that we can help you with is, I've been to 130 clinics personally. AAF has been to over 50. Here's a really good tip for all you people who run clinics out there. If you don't know how to even look at your clinic to say, what are my needs? Take a tour of your clinic, and every time you say that fucking fill in the blank, that could be fence that's broken, coffee pot that's cracked, you know, whatever it is, you know, something that keeps hitting you in the face, you know, do an assessment of, you know, do you need heating pad covers? Are your footies on your exam chairs, you know, do you need new ones? You know, are you noticing that your staff is feeling burnt out? Is it that are you noticing that maybe childcare is getting harder for your staff, and maybe AAF could help kick in some money for that, for transportation cards? How many people take public transportation, and would bus metro kind of cards be helpful for staff? You know, like, it's a dream thing. It's sort of think big and think small and think everything in between, and figure out a way to introduce to the clinic maybe some needs also, because sometimes people don't, it's like you said, they don't have time to think they're providing care. And so in that providing of care, is it that, you know, the garden needs to be redone? Is it that we could sure use a shredding company to come and get rid of our files of our closets that need to be cleaned out? And in the case of Hope Clinic, I want to talk a little bit about this project we're working on now, so you can think big and how we're all going to help together, of like a big need they have. So Steph, go ahead and talk about what's happening at Hope in this big project.
Yeah. So earlier this year, I just on a whim texted Allison, and I just said, could we plant some plants? Could I get away somehow with poking a protester with something thorny and not get in trouble for it? And she said, sure, perhaps, you know, we started talking about it. And I started asking around just folks that I knew that weren't previously super engaged. And this is a way that a lot of folks, they were like, I'll pledge a plant. I'll donate some time helping design this landscape. And so we started talking about plants, and then I reached out to Abortion Access Front. You guys are amazing. And through our conversations, it got a little bit bigger, and we talked about, like, what if this area that's very narrow and hard to plant was actually a fence? And that was like, obviously that's what needs to happen, because that would be a game changer for the situation outside with protesters. Mm-hmm. And would offer a lot of, like, really nice aesthetic benefits to the clinic as well. So wonderful. So we're in the process right now of working with the city to work, you know, zoning issues and such with the placement of the fence, but optimistic that will be sorted out well, and that a fence is going to be possible, but we need to raise some funds for the benefit of that fence. And I will say, it would be a huge difference, because it is a very long stretch where that fence will go, that the protesters like to use to their advantage. It's like the long side of this open side of the parking lot, and the protesters like to go so far as to lean over the hoods of the patients' cars and shake brochures at them as they're exiting the vehicles. This fence would eliminate that possibility and keep them back a greater distance, obscure the numerous signs they like to stake into the ground, and just, like, generally keep them farther away from everybody and make it harder for, like, patients and protesters to have any physical interaction at all.
That's incredible. We do want to take some questions, so if you have any, add them in. Okay, we're going to take them in a minute. There's a Q&A portion for you to put your questions in. So I see you, Kara, and I'm afraid you're going to go away with questions coming up, but we'll come to you. One of the things I think that this is a good time for, if you are in the St. Louis area and want to help with a fundraiser or try to figure out how to raise some money for this fence, I think it's good. Maybe you could raise money by the foot. You know, how long is the fence? How many do we want to do it? You know, do it by the yard. Like, it could be some really fun things. And I know that AAF will try to help plan a fun way to do a fundraiser. And I mean, you could pledge a picket, because fences are picket fences, and we have picketers. I mean, I feel like, you know, I could do this all day. So somebody reel me back into what we're talking about.
You run with it.
Because I love it. But this is the kind of things where, like, you know, we want to be able to be helpful with, you know, being able to, if it's a big project like this, to be able to give some of the funds, but then also help a way to raise the funds. And, you know, if we're all just in this together, then we can really help each place do, and we can share information. You know, if we get a successful fundraising going for the fence, you know, that's just information to share with our whole coalition of people, to say, this was a super successful way that we did it. Here's the toolkit for it. You can help plan it. And it just makes me feel super excited about having this group of people. And the more we talk about it, the more people are outraged. I think oftentimes we get so anesthetized to these people that it doesn't seem outrageous to us, and we need to remember the outrage to relay to other people that This is not okay. It is not okay that providers and patients go to work every day and people with bullhorns are terrorizing them. And it's just not okay, right? And so
you're so right about anesthetizing us. You know, I walked in last week and two of our really, you know, nationally known protesters were yelling at me my address in Oakland that I just moved back from. Like, they knew my address. I received death threats at my house, you know, like, but we deal with it every day. So it's just like rolls off of our back, but it's not okay. And it's dangerous, and it's putting people at risk. And we really rely on you to remind us that it's not okay. And there's actual steps we can take to deal with it.
And that it's like, I call it intersectional hatred. And I think that it's so important to get our advocates and our comrades who are working, if they primarily focus on a different issue area, guarantee you that these anti-abortion people are instrumental in those movements as well, because it's like we have discovered that with Operation Save America and with all these other people, is that they are at the middle front and the back front of the other issues, and they're at the forefront of abortion, but they are very, very powerful. And if we all know who they are, and we can marginalize them and tamp them down, and I think that we can in turn just be better at as a larger movement for justice than we are. So,
and just name it. They're white supremacists, they're anti-gay, they're anti-abortion, you know, most of the things that we hold dear, they're anti-public health. These are the people that are stopping us. And because Trump administration is in power right now, these are the people also making policy within departments and behind the scenes, because they're people that Trump has hired, and they have
exactly
long
right.
history of all of this. It's not new.
And they're in your community. So if you're here listening, thinking, I wanted to hear how it's working in St. Louis so I can try to implement some of these things where I live, you can reach out to Anna or Anka at aafront.org, and they will help loop you in to help you figure out ways that you can be helpful. Let's take some questions really quick, as we have a question. This is from Kara, who is an incredible advocate out of Memphis. And this is a question for Steph. I've had someone reach out for help with a minor. As a volunteer, I really didn't know where to refer them. I ended up sending different websites with general information about the abortion pill. Is there a website or place you can recommend with questions around minors' access to abortion when parental consent comes up, no matter what state you're in?
Yeah, actually, this is something that advocates nationwide are actively working on right now. So I would say there's a couple things. You know, the one thing is, like, I don't think it's an altogether bad thing to send folks information about the pill in general. If, When, How does run a repro legal helpline to help folks with the legal issues they might encounter if they do choose to self-manage abortion. So that might also be worthwhile to share. And then in addition to that, If, When, How actually is creating collaboratively with folks like me around the country this, it's called a Judicial Bypass Wiki. And so you can find it on their website, and it's a catalog. It's basically a wiki that is user edited. It's under construction right now, but we're working to build it out so that any state that does have a parental involvement law, there's good information about what resources might be available in that state and what the laws are. And then a great resource if you're running into trouble is Jane's Due Process in Texas. I think someone dropped that into the chat. They're really working to establish themselves nationally as a kind of to fill in the gaps where other states don't have advocates working on this issue. So that is where I would go if I were coming up with questions, because if they may very well know, and if they don't, they may know where to send you, or they'll actually try to hunt down that answer.
That's awesome. And I would just also say too, for those who are literally found us and are learning about how to access any clinics or want to get involved where they live and haven't before, super crucial thing to say is, do not just make an initial announcement or show up at a clinic to be helpful. Clinics don't know who you are. When I literally started my journey 10 years ago, like full on in this, when I announced that I wanted to drive across country and help clinics and in my van with my dogs, I sounded like exactly what that sounds like. I'm going to get in a van with my dogs and go visit clinics. It's like, are you? Except for maybe we'll arrest you at the border. So it might be a good idea to start with reaching out to us first, and we have good relationships with every clinic, so we can direct you to the local activists if you are unclear about who they are, and the clinics, and they will give you ways that you can participate and get to know them. Be open to have people ask you questions about who you are, because there's a lot of people who are not awesome, who try to act like they're awesome. So just taking those things into account so that we're honoring and respecting clinics, and we don't give them one more headache. Like when the cavalry comes, they're loaded for bear, and they're really, really positive and helpful. So that is something I just wanted to say for those of you who are listening for the first time. Let's go with final thoughts here. We're about to wrap up. I want to thank you all so much for being such incredible advocates and providers. Let's give some final thoughts and takeaways as to what you want folks to know out of how all this means.
Well, I, just wanted to thank Abortion Access Front for this opportunity. We have been the beneficiary of your kindness and love and support for so many years. AAF has come to our clinic to literally paint our walls, has sent us individually wrapped snacks during COVID, where we're used to meal sharing and we can't do that any longer. They're like, what do you need? I'm like, we could use swag at tables when we table events at colleges or whatever. And Anna made me amazing stickers, whatever. Like, when Liz tells you, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, she truly means it from the bottom of her heart. This is why she got this organization up and going. And I think you've single-handedly been to more clinics around the country than any other person that I know who has been doing this work for, 45 years. And so please use her as a resource, because we do want your support. We are burdened sometimes because we're so busy just providing care. But if you're willing to be flexible, creative, and fun, like Abortion Access Front has been able to do, and which makes them so nimble and so successful in their support and advocacy, we need it. We're here for it. It makes us feel so much better, and it'll make you feel better too. So please, reach out to them and get involved, at our clinic or your local clinic. It's so important and so rewarding. So thank you.
Thank you. Steph.
That's tough to follow, but I would echo what Alison had to say about abortion.
Or you'll turn into Steph and like, I'm emailing you constantly and coming up with new things, and you're like,
I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. Yeah. No, I mean, my experience reaching out to, I reached out cold about my landscaping project, and from the very first email, you were all so warm and helpful, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciated that, because I didn't even know that I would get a response. This was our first interaction. And obviously, Alison, I look up to you so much. I just love working with you. And I would just say locally, we definitely have a need for more folks like me to be out as legal observers. That's a definite need that we have, and it would help the clinic in a real way immediately. Also, I think we'll be following up about this landscaping project. We definitely could use that type of support, and I would just encourage, other folks that want to be doing work like this. Like, this is kind of self-driven, because I feel called to do this work, and it's taken many years, just like you all said. Like, I wasn't immediately trusted when I came from out of town and said I want to do this, but like, it has paid off. My persistence has paid off. So I would definitely encourage other folks that want to engage in this and like take on work like this to do it and keep at it.
There's no one I trust more, so I'm thankful for your persistence.
Marie.
I practical support's always near and dear to my heart. So, and I think that but it's hard. It's a fine line because yes, support the clinic, donate to the clinic, but also think about abortion funds, think about those other communities, because clinics can work with patients, and they definitely try to make the cost as reasonable as possible for patients. But, and we didn't even get into this, but like clinics need to pay staff. Clinics need to they have operating costs. Clinics have to pay for security in a lot of states. So thinking about all those things that are at play, then when a patient comes in, it isn't possible, unfortunately, because of legislation like the Hyde Amendment that limits the type of aid a patient can receive to their procedure. So think about those funds and those other communities that are there helping cover that patient's cost for care when they're going to that clinic. And especially in times like COVID, where we've talked about transportation being limited, hotels are limited or are even closed in some places. Little things like that can create a huge barrier for someone who's just trying to access care, and who's driving up from Arkansas or driving over from central Missouri to try to get to Hope Clinic. So I encourage folks to think about that like big picture, like, all right, what maybe you don't feel equipped to volunteer in a legal capacity, but you can provide donated items. You can look to other things that clinics need to pass on to patients. A lot of clinics do take-home packs for patients that need pads, that need socks, that now hand sanitizer, like thinking about things like that and getting creative and talking to AAF and seeing what types of mutual aid things are Anna and Anka working on. Those are types of easy ways that you could literally from your couch, from your computer, can figure out ways to really impact someone who's just trying to access that abortion care that they need. That, as Alison said, is timely, is critical, is important.
And Marie and I are literally supporting at least one patient every day with their practical support. That's not the cost of their procedure. That is their transportation to and from the clinic. That is their childcare. That is their hotel. And it has been a real struggle these past 5 months to find volunteers because of the real fear of COVID, where we even feel guilty asking people because we don't want to put volunteers in that position. But that doesn't mean patients suddenly don't have that fate. And so it's been a real struggle, but at the same time, a blessing to see how people will step up. And so I think, abortion funds are great, so important. We don't make millions, people. We're in the red literally every year. Like, this is not an industry you get into for money if you're doing it right. But that practical support is just so needed. And there's so many ways you can lend a hand.
And I would just echo that to say, part of our mission is to help you, no matter what your physical need or physical abilities, financial abilities are to help. We will meet you where you are so that you can do rewarding, helpful work that rises to your own capacity. We want you in this for the long game because you want to be in it for the long game, because this is a community of people that are so caring and so lovely, and who have made the decision for every single person who has decided that this pregnancy that they have right now is not going to be a pregnancy that they want to carry on for whatever their reason is, to be able to facilitate that for somebody and get them on a path to their own self-determination. There's many ways you can make people feel really great about facilitating somebody's own journey, and we're here to help you do that. And for those of you who are watching who would like to have this a webinar like this and involve your clinic in your community, or if you're an activist that would like to get the clinic involved and have one of these in your community, just email Anna and Anka. Their emails are in here, and you can just get involved. And we want to do as many of these as we can so that we can get the temperature and figure out what the needs are of your community and tailor this accordingly. So this has been incredibly rewarding to talk to both of you. Let's get this fence, let's get this garden. I just want to say one thing, is that holly bushes, if they grow in your area, are prickly and beautiful, and they're delightful. So if you want to have a bush that antis go near and it's prickly, holly bushes are the way to go. That is my 2 cents.
Noted. They're in my grandma's front yard. We can go dig them out and replant them tonight.
There you go. There you go. Thank you all for attending. And again, to Anna and Anka, who organized all of this, thank you so much. Stephanie, Alison, Marie, and for me and all of us at AAF and the Scrappy Coalition, thank you. Let's do it again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, thank you. Are we just leaving now? Is that what happens?